Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we dig into the documents that companies don't want you to read. Today we're looking at a proxy statement from Tyra Biosciences, and trust me, there are some interesting votes coming up, especially if you like knowing who's calling the shots. Tyra Biosciences is getting ready for its annual meeting, and that means it's time to decide on a few key things like who sits on the board of directors, that is the group that oversees the company. Plus, they need to get the thumbs up on their accounting firm. The people who check their financial records, it is important to note that those documents and the full details are available online for anyone to read. First up, the election of directors. 3 people are up for House: Adele Golfo and Michael Rothenberg. If they get voted in, they'll serve until the annual meeting in 2028. The board is recommending that you vote for all 3 of them. It's always key to know who the directors are because they make the big decisions for the company. Each of them has his or her own expertise. Todd Harris is the current CEO. Adele Golfo has a lot of experience in the drug industry, and Michael Rothenberg is a medical expert. For instance, Adele Golfo served as the Chief Executive Officer Biopharma Commercial, Sumitomo Pharma America, Inc. She has a lot of leadership experience. This includes being responsible for launching big brands and being on other boards. Michael Rothenberg served as Chief Medical Officer of In Seek. He was also at Pfizer for a while. Also, his resume includes experience at Loxo Oncology and cancer research at Massachusetts General Hospital Cancer Center. So in other words, both nominees seems very qualified for the job. Next on the agenda is picking the accounting firm. The board wants you to ratify or approve their choice of Ernst & Young L as the company's independent registered public accounting firm for the current year. Basically, you are being asked to confirm that you are okay with them. The board thinks it's a good idea to get stockholder approval. Even if you vote yes, the audit committee can still change its mind later if it needs to. Let's take a quick look at what Tyra paid Ernst & Young in the past. For the year of 2024, they paid around $626,000 for audit fees. This is for checking the company's financial statements and so on. That is roughly the same number as last year, so we don't see any big change there. Now, let's shift gears and talk about corporate governance. That is, the rules and systems that guide how the company is run. The board has a bunch of guidelines and a code of ethics that they follow. One thing that matters a lot is director independence. The NASDAQ listing requirements or stock market rules want to make sure that most of the directors don't have a conflict of interest. The board has determined that all of the directors, except for the CEO Todd Harris, are independent. This is good because it means they can make decisions that are in the best interest of the stockholders. How do they decide who gets to be on the board? The Nominating and Corporate Governance Committee, that is the group in charge of this, looks for people with certain skills and experience. They want people with integrity, strong leadership, and experience in the industry. If you want to suggest someone, you can write to the company secretary with all the details about the candidate. Speaking of communicating, the board wants to hear from you, the stockholders. If you have something to say, write to the company secretary. Your letters are read, and if they are important enough, they'll make it to the directors. Another key job of the board is to keep an eye on risks. They talk to management about the big risks the company faces and what they're doing to handle them. Tyra has a code of business conduct and ethics. This applies to everyone from the top executives to the regular employees. It's all about doing things the right way. They also have rules about insider trading using secret information. The policy says that officers, directors, and employees can't use inside information to make money on the stock market. They are also not allowed to bet against the company's stock. The board has different committees to handle different jobs. There's the Audit Committee for Finances, the Compensation Committee for paying the executives, the Nominating and Corporate Governance Committee for picking directors, and the Science and Technology Committee for Research and Development. Now let's talk about money, more specifically executive pay. The finding shows how much the top executives made in 2023 and 2024. This includes their salary, stock options, and bonuses. In 2024, Todd Harris, the CEO, made about $7.6 million. That includes a base salary of about $603. Daniel Benson, the Chief Operating Officer, made about $273,000, and stock options worth about Matthew the Officer made about $2.7 million to $4.7 million. For $7 million. It is important to remember that stock options don't have an actual value. They're only estimates and depend on the performance of the company stock in the future. The base salaries for the CEO and COO went up a bit in 2024, while the CMO's salary was set when he was hired. The report contains information about the stock options owned by the executives at the end of 2024. These are rights to buy shares of stock at a certain price, and they can be worth a lot if the stock goes up. The details of the employment agreements and other elements of compensation is in the report. Directors also get paid for their service. They get annual fees and stock options. The amount depends on their role and committee memberships. As an example, Robert Moore received almost $306,000. Who owns the most stock? The filing tells you who the big stockholders are, including the directors and executive officers. It's good to know who has the most skin in the game because they have a big say in what happens at the company. This is a key part of a proxy statement so you can see the big picture. A good example is that entities affiliated with RA Capital Healthcare Fund LP fund about 20% of the company. This means that whatever the firm's representatives say probably goes, and by the way, the company does not appear to be in good financial shape. Back in February, they had to raise money through a private placement, that is, selling stock to some big investors. A few of the big stockholders bought more shares in that placement. It's worth knowing who those big stockholders are. RA Capital Management LP, Nextech Seek Oncology, and FMR LLC each bought about $20 million worth of shares. I will note that the wording gives the impression that those entities were in financial trouble and needed that cash urgently, and by LOC each bought about $20 million worth of shares. I will note that the wording gives the impression that those entities were in financial trouble and needed that cash urgently. One last thing, the filing mentions that there was one late report from Giller Kaplan about a stock option exercise. It happens, but it's good to know that the company is keeping track of these things. This proxy statement is your guide to voting at the annual meeting. The board wants you to vote for their recommendations. Now, my take. Tyra Biosciences is at an interesting stage. The company has to get the votes right, that's for sure. What do I mean by that? Well, it is a company that's spending a lot of money and needs more. In other words, it does not have a solid foundation. The big stockholders have a lot of control, and that can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on their goals. Based on my opinion of the general market, I'd approach this stock with caution. Thanks for watching Corporate Decoder. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below.